Good morning from Tycoon. So, I thought I'd speak a little bit about the A7IV and Sony 35mm 1.8 versus the Fuji X100VI. Both of them are the same effective focal lengths, and I mean, they're not the same price, but they might be comparable. Let me just find somewhere not scorching hot to talk about this. Okay, we found some shade. Well, some patchy shade to talk about this. So I'm currently expelled from my apartment. It's being cleaned. Tomorrow is delivery day of the apartment back to our landlords. We're moving into a hotel room, and our residency here in Hong Kong is coming to an end very, very soon. We are moving to Phuket, Thailand on the 15th of July. That's neither here nor there, so let's get into it. Maybe I should sit down for this. How about this barbecue area? Ooh, there's some aircon units here though. Let's test the noise cancellation of this directional microphone I'm using. What's a good spot? And there's traffic on this side. How am I supposed to do this? I think as long as I don't have the sound directly behind me, I'm okay. Let me see if this might be a good spot. Let's try this. So right off the bat, if this was a beauty competition, I mean, hands down, the Fuji X100 wins all day. It is such a beautiful, tiny little camera. In my opinion, there's nothing as beautiful as this. I didn't include the lens hood on the Sony 35mm 1.8 because I usually don't use lens hoods, except if they're very, very aesthetically pleasing. And let's be honest, this looks beautiful. This lens hood looks absolutely amazing. I'm gonna put a link to this lens hood in the description, and I don't have an affiliate link, and I don't have any connection with this company, obviously. Just if you want to get that specific hood, I love it. So the hood also is an adapter ring, and I'm using a black Pro Mist filter on this 1.18 string. All right, I was thinking to just take a couple of shots head to head, and label one of the shots A and the other B, and just keep comparing the two shots without you knowing what's what, and see if you guess right which camera is A and which camera is B, if you really see the difference. Now obviously the Sony A7IV is a full frame camera, so there is going to be a depth of field, like the background should be a little bit blurrier. The Fuji has a little bit more resolution, so you do have a little bit more room to crop and stuff like that, and it is obviously like the form factor of this is absolutely amazing. I mean, look at the size difference. You can't compare these two. Another way you can't compare these two is in terms of video. I mean, hands down, Sony is gonna win. I think it was in the vlog before yesterday where I had like a talking head. I felt pretty confident using the Fuji to vlog on because, most cameras today have face detect. But for some reason, maybe it's my confusing face, the Fuji X100VI didn't do really well with the talking head, even though there's nothing in the frame really except my face. Maybe I stuffed it up. Maybe the face detect wasn't correctly set up or something. Anyway, we all know that the autofocus on Sony cameras is absolutely stellar. So I think this just comes down to a couple of things, which camera you should get. You should get whatever camera fits your future intentions and your needs for it. Horses for courses. You should get, if you're a hybrid shooter, if you intend to do quite a bit of video, get the Sony, hands down. If you want to make your life simple and easy, if you don't want to get into buying all sorts of lenses and carrying around a big bag and having a kit and buying a microphone, this, that, and the other, get the Fuji. The beauty of the Fuji is that it's small enough for you to have it on your shoulder without you noticing it too much. It is such a tiny little package. and yet it packs a punch. It punches well above its weight. It's so powerful. I mean, the IBIS on the Fuji is better than the one on the Sony. If we're talking just, head to head, say 1/5 shutter, or I mean, I've seen people holding the Fuji on 1 second handheld, and it's sharp. I don't even understand how that's possible. Maybe I'll do like a comparison with the long shutter on the Fuji versus the Sony. So the IBIS unit of the Fuji is better. It's a newer camera. It has more resolution, but it also has, like, compared to at least this lens, just about the same like lights, f1.8 versus f2. I mean, that's basically the same, but the difference is mainly full frame sensor versus a crop sensor. So you will get a little bit more depth of field. It is going to be a little bit more blurry, the background, and you're going to have the ability to change lenses on the Sony. I mean, you can get those adapters for the Fuji. You can, it's 23 millimeters right off the gate, and you can get an adapter like 23 millimeters that make it effectively, in full frame field of view terms, a 35 millimeter lens. You can get 2 adapters for the Fuji. You can either make it a 28 millimeter lens in full frame terms, or you can make it a 50 millimeter lens in full frame terms. I used to have the 50 millimeter teleconverter on, I think it was an X100F or an X100T, and it looked pretty good. It softened the image a little bit, but like I said, I have a soft filter on my lens anyway, so I didn't mind it. But if you're a pixel peeper, if you're really into getting the optimal most sharpness, you will be sacrificing a little bit of image quality for those teleconverters. Also, it's going to make the camera like significantly bigger. I might have some old photos of the teleconverter. Let me see if I can include those in the video. So again, horses for courses. You should pick the lens and the camera and the setup that most or best reflects how you plan to use it. You have to be really honest with yourself. Don't be too idealistic, like, I want to do this or I plan to do this. Just how have you been using the cameras in the past? Like, you need to have the camera with you, and the more you use it, the more worth it the investment is to you. And for me, like, a lot of the times I've had many of these cameras. I had the original X100 back in 2011. I've had X100T, X100F. I've had now the X100VI, and I've sold the cameras multiple times, mostly just to upgrade if I'm getting like a more expensive camera body, or if I really want to get like a super expensive lens. I have sold the X100s just to help finance that or justify that purchase. But, almost always, like 6 months or a year later, I'm almost always regretting selling the Fuji. So I fully intend on not selling the X100VI and just keeping it. With that being said, it does not replace my A7IV. I've had this camera since early 22. I had it for 2 years, and it served me absolutely tremendously, both in terms of video and photos. I'm a professional photographer and filmmaker here in Hong Kong, and I would say I have also a pair of A1s. I'm shooting this on a CVE1. Like, if you're not holding it, it has a little bit of rolling shutter, and you don't have that high frame rates. You just mostly have like a really super good normal speeds, 25 frames, 30 frames FPS video on this camera. The 4K normal speed video on this is so good, especially if you're not handholding and moving it vigorously. Because like I said, the rolling shutter, the readout speed on this sensor is not the greatest, but the dynamic range of this thing is phenomenal. And in my opinion, dynamic range is one of the most important aspects of a sensor that you can have. Recently, Nikon announced the Z6III, and it is a partially stacked sensor, meaning that it has a really good fast readout speeds compared to, like, it belongs in the same category as this, like an entry-level, very reasonably priced full-frame camera. But, like, that camera can do cropped 100 or 120 frames per second 4K video. This can only do cropped 50 or 60 frames per second. So the Sony Z6III beats the Sony out in that facet, but the Sony has a better dynamic range. And if you're pushing and pulling the image, if you accidentally make the image too bright or too dark, you can recover that better with the Sonys usually, because I think universally Sony make the best sensors out of the market. I believe Sony make most of the sensors for all the smartphones out there, and that's no accident. You know, the manufacturers of the phones know that the camera is important, so they want to include and use the best possible sensor, and most of them choose to work with Sony. So Sony have a really good sensor development team, and I believe still to this day Nikon is using Sony sensors, and let's see what's happened in the future, because there's a really awesome cinematography camera company called Red that Nikon just recently acquired. So maybe they make their own sensors, or they have their own sensors. I don't know how exactly that works. Maybe they have like a third-party developed sensors for them specifically for their specs, but let's see what happens in the future for Nikon, because maybe they're going to have their own sensors via Red, and that would be an absolutely game-changing element for Nikon, because they've been lagging a little bit behind. They've lost market share to all the other companies. We're getting sidetracked. Why are we talking about Nikon Z6III? In general, if you're thinking about either the Fuji X100VI or any other full-frame option or camera, I would say the biggest factor of this camera is the form factor. Like, nothing competes with this in terms of form and function, and it is tremendously powerful compared to how small it is. And in my opinion, I'm a staunch proponent and a big fan of prime lenses. You know, they're smaller than the zoom lenses, and usually they give you more quality. They're usually brighter. They give you more background separation, and just sometimes, you know, if you have restrictions in your workflow, like, you know, for me, once I switched from zoom lenses to prime lenses, one thing that I really noticed is that how I applied myself. I would sometimes, when I had a zoom lens, 24-70 or something, I would stand in the same spot. I would do 24, 35, 50, and 70. Like, you know, from the same spot, maybe changing the framing a little bit in between shots. But like with the fixed lens, I would move. I would, like, you know, move the foreground a little bit, or maybe if I stand here, maybe if I lower my stance, I would apply myself more actively into getting a better shot. And I would say, you know, of course, everyone has different needs. Everyone is like I said, again, horses for courses. If you're an event photographer, you might miss the moment if you have to like run in a different place or get closer to the moment because you have a fixed lens. But in that case, like, you know, definitely you need a zoom lens. You might even need two camera bodies and two zoom lenses. But if you're strictly speaking, like, you know, you're taking pictures for the joy of it, you're traveling, it's kind of just like an extra thing added on top of whatever you're into, whatever you're doing. I would say like a fixed lens, a prime lens, is a really good way to go about things. If you're worried about 35 millimeters being a little bit too tight in terms of field of view, Ricoh GR make absolutely amazing cameras that are 28 millimeter. There is a one-stop sacrifice in terms of light gathering. The Fuji X100VI has an f2 lens, but the Ricoh GR has an f2.8 lens. It's smaller too. The lens, like, you know, if you turn the camera on, the lens kind of, well, pulls out, just like, you know, those classic old school point and shoot cameras back in the day. So like, and if you turn it off, like the lens goes back into the body. That camera is really the only super powerful pocketable camera out there in the market. I used to have it, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. But I know I'm okay with having a little bit bigger camera because I'm fine having it on the shoulder. So ultimately, also the 35 millimeter focal length just suits me a little bit better. So ultimately for me personally, the X100 series of camera is a better fit. But if you're a street photographer, if you like to be a little bit more closer to the action, if you're, even if you're a landscape photographer, if you're just more into whatever, like 28 millimeters is a little bit more all around. And I think the Ricoh GR is a brilliant camera line. So I think right now out there are so many options out there for you. And all you have to do is just to have like a really honest dialogue with yourself. You have to figure out like in what sort of scenarios you plan to use the camera in. And depending on that, you should make your choice. If you just want to walk around and look cool, Fuji all day. But statics is whatever. That's just a bonus for me. If I'm doing any sort of a video, of course, A7IV all day. Okay, what time is it? I gotta get going soon. I'm gonna head to 3 Thai and meet up with Sean. He's gonna show me some new facilities he got for his business, his family business. They just recently closed the deal on like a huge space that has not been converted. Like it's literally at 0.0 right now. They also rented like an old heritage building that is beautiful, that they're going to expand their tutoring and schooling into. And he's kind enough to offer me to show me around that a little bit. So I'm gonna head on over now and have a look.
My sincere apologies on the audio. I didn't realize how bad the aircon was gonna be. This won't happen again. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for your patience. To wrap things up, I did do something that I didn't tell you beforehand. You may have seen that in the very last comparison photo between the A7IV and the X100VI, and that was that I shot the Sony camera and the 35mm lens on the Sony at f2.8. The reason why I did that is just to kind of have a similar depth of field, if not the same depth of field. And also, like, I used to have the size 28mm lens, which is an f2.8. It's a very, very small lens. I think you can get like a Samyang lens that is like a similar size and also 2.8. And that lens makes those two cameras a little bit more comparable in terms of size. And yeah, so I did stop the Sony down to 2.8. If you pixel peep, the Sony lens has a little bit of purple fringing, but it's not really bad. It's not very noticeable. So the lens on the Fuji is a little bit better. I mean, it is more new. It's a more modern lens. I can't remember exactly when the 35 1.8 came out, 2018 maybe or something like that. Whereas the Fuji X100VI lens, I think it was refurbished, or they like updated it like maybe 2 years ago or something like that. So in essence, these are both amazing tools for making videos and photos. And I probably made a mistake in terms of the face detect on the video on the Fuji. So I have like a little shortcut button right next to the shutter button. And if I press that button, and that happens sometimes accidentally, I turn off face detect. So I'm quite sure that in the vlog that I mentioned earlier in the video, where the Fuji X100VI was messing up with the eye focus or the face detect, that was my fault. So in essence, both of these cameras are tremendous tools. You just have to essentially decide, is form factor or is being able to change the lens more important to you? That's essentially all you have to decide. And also if you want to look cool with it. All right, I'm gonna call it tonight. It's almost midnight again. This is our last night in our apartment here at the Mediterranean. Tomorrow we're going to get everything out and move into the hotel. So see you again tomorrow in a hotel room.